United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Attendance appointment of alternates. Alan is, our alternate is in Mississippi, I believe, and Geraldine will be here about 7:30, 7:45, so we will work with what we got in place until Geraldine gets here. With that, building department.
Not on the agenda.
A little information for you to peruse if you would.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Now,
And that Alan.
I don't think is Bob sitting in tonight?
No, he is not.
Okay.
He was just there, wasn't he? And he just left.
Okay.
Copy right here, John, when she arrives. I don't know how much time you folks have had to look at this yet, but please feel free to ask any questions if you have any.
I guess you got anything you want to present? You just,
No, what I'm looking for in addition this year is to go from a part-time clerical to another full-time clerical in my office. That is what we are looking for. I think the supporting documentation that I brought will hopefully spell out to you what has been going on, not just in our department, but in our community over the course of the past 16 years. I've tried to break it down on an annual permit basis, revenue basis, construction value basis, and the construction value is just for the structures. It's not necessarily for the site work, primarily just for the structures that are permitted in the building. Then I've given you an annual revenue average on a permit basis, along with a construction valuation on a per permit basis. It should give you a pretty good indication of the ups and downs, what's carried us through the years. You can certainly see the spikes, and I think that we started on a spike, and it started last year. And I continue, if you'll take a look at the next to the last page that I've submitted, with the exception of 2 of the projects listed on this page, everything else has been approved through planning and zoning. And I know there are 1, if not 2 other large projects that are not even listed on here because they haven't been presented to planning and development yet. But that would give you an idea of the anticipated construction value right now and the anticipated permit revenue for the 1920 upcoming year. If the larger projects take off, obviously the project down on 105 Prospect Hill Road, there were no numbers included in the budget for that whatsoever because that was just approved. I have spoken with the principals down there at this point in time and was told they are proceeding. I do know that the other project that has just been approved recently by Planning and Development which is at 12 South Main Street. That's the 202,000 square foot manufacturing, with 7,500 square foot vehicle maintenance and fueling depot. To my knowledge, that is moving forward this year as well, meaning within this fiscal year. The owner of the property at 151 Prospect Hill Road told me that today that the large gaming complex comes in for a permit in the building department. He's requested a courtesy call because he has plans on a shelf all ready to go, and said he would be in to submit for a 5-story, 60 to 65 room hotel.
Would this new hire be doing any data entry, such as view permit?
Well, every permit gets entered into view permits.
Okay, is it being maintained though? Because there was some discussion that things are not moving forward because nobody's really
Well,
maintaining it.
if it is, it certainly isn't because of our department,
Okay.
okay? The manner in which view permit is actually configured,
Mm-hmm.
that software is configured so that each department actually carries its own module.
Mm-hmm.
And within that module, they're given an opportunity to be an administrator within their own department, set up their own process, okay, and their own procedures in terms of the development, the review of those permits, and the approval of those permits.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively, view permit, each department becomes its own administrator. We have a policy in the building department and a process that's set up not just for the acceptance of the permits, but also for the processing of those permits. That being said, we're the last in that funnel pipeline, meaning we cannot push a button and print out a permit or send an email until every other department, whether it's planning and development, whether it's WPCA, North Central District Health Department, engineering, or let me think, tax department is a perfect example. When we punch in an address, if the property is tax delinquent, it comes up, and that stops the program dead in its tracks until the tax collector has signed off on it. I'd like to think that if you take a look at this top sheet that I provided to you, you can see that the construction value, we haven't seen anything last year in the 17-18. The closest year we had to it was the 2011, 2012, and that was the year that Walmart actually came in. Our numbers stayed reasonably, I don't want to say inflated, but our numbers stayed reasonable to what they should have been through the recession, but that was primarily because the project known as Mansions at Canyon Ridge, they had all of their financing and all of their construction costs in place when the market tanked. And because of that, they were able to move forward and kept that project moving. To give you an idea, each one of those buildings is 10 units, individual apartment units. But the building itself is, each building went for around $1 million to put each building up. The project up on 140 that we received the permit application fee for a year ago, that has stalled. We've all seen it, and that's 121 1- and 2-bedroom units. That's apartment for 55 and older. They've given me every indication they're kicking off again shortly. So that is number one why I have the part-time professional services line in. If you'll notice, you provided it to me through a special appropriation last year. If you take a look at that line right now, let me get to where I need to be, please. That's not what I'm looking for, I'm sorry. Currently,
Screen, right?
pardon me?
It's up on the screen.
Oh, thank you. I don't know if I can see that.
You had spent 5872 by 228.
I've got it right here, professional services. We expended $5,800 out of that line last year. Some of that did go to the project up on 140, but primarily that was used because I had a medical situation that kept me in a cast and on crutches for about 3 months. What I've tried to do is, in seeking this full-time administrative position in the building department, I've determined that it would probably be best to start that position off at the lowest grade level. I thought that based on the complexity of it, it's going to take an individual a minimum, an absolute minimum of a year to learn what they need to learn, to be comfortable in that department. To give you an indication right now, our codes have changed again. They changed last October, and they are becoming more onerous and more complex with every code change. And if you want to take a look at the last page in the handout that I gave you, this came through the Office of the State Building Official to us in an email along with all the statutory requirements. But this gives you an indication of the levels that we have to go through just when we go to accept a permit now. All right, with the implementation of the 2018 State of Connecticut Building Code, we adopted what is known as the 2015 International Existing Building Code. And that deals for any type of revisions, any type of restoration work, the replacement of roofs. So today we have to determine the actual level of construction that's taking place. All new construction goes through what's known as 2015 International Building Code. But for commercial and/or some residential, not all, but some residential additions or remodeling, that type of thing, we go into the existing building code now.
So the additional full-time person would basically free you up to be on the road doing
No,
inspection?
not necessarily. That additional person in my office would be handling the constant stream of phone calls. And what I'd like you to do there again, we put together some data, and this data also went to the Board of Selectmen. The second page gives you an indication of the amount of traffic that comes into the office, what the individual permits that we issue, what's required, the amount of data entry that goes into each permit, the amount of inspections that go into it. As you can see, we kept track of what we need to do and remit for reports to either state or federal agencies, along with the Treasurer's Office, and then all of the calls, the voice messages, the people that come into our office. What this doesn't include is any of my information, meaning the phone calls I make, the phone calls I receive, the emails. It is quite a stack. But we put this together in order to hopefully provide you with the information to see that we're fastly approaching the needs. The page after that, with the building department, the current status, pretty much is just a snapshot of where we are today. And what we have with some of the projects that are currently underway. And a lot of these projects people don't see. An example, at 53 Prospect Hill, there's almost a 32,000 square foot structure. And that structure was formerly a banquet facility. Well, for the past 2 years, there's been constant work on, in, or around that structure. Everything from a $2.5 million new roof. The interior is completely gutted. So all of the utilities inside of this structure are new. All the wiring is new. All of the framing is new. All the gas piping, all of the plumbing, everything. And that's one of those projects you drive by it every day. But because you don't see a flurry of activity coming in and out, you just kind of drive by and say, oh, there's nothing happening there. Well, there's a lot happening there. As far as the residential projects, Newberry Village, Acorn Drive, Hamlet Homes, some of these projects have been going on for years, but now we're getting close to completion on them. There is talk that a long-standing project that's stalled for a variety of reasons. I do know that the town, from the tax collector's office to the first selectman's office, the owner of the properties and the developers are in talks right now, and that could be an additional 44 residential single-family homes being approved to the town. And for what it's worth, if any of you have any questions about any of this, drop me an email. I'm more than happy to respond.
Any further questions for Leanne?
Do you still plan on using the person from Bolton that you were using, or did that kind of, do you have a different plan?
Well, I will tell you that we have been in contact with Bolton, and they came back with a proposal that we felt didn't serve the needs of the town very well at all.
Okay.
At this point in time, I've been discussing with Bob and Amy a variety of different options to look at. I don't think we're ready to pull the trigger on it yet, because I think we need to wait for some of these larger projects to come in, okay? And at that point in time, obviously, there'll have to be some added appropriations, because these projects are going to require it. And those added appropriations would involve either sending it out to plan review or an independent review. These larger structures, they're what we call threshold structures. And these structures over 100,000 square feet, there's a couple of different things that have to happen statutorily with them. Not the least of which is they're required to undergo an independent peer review by the structural engineer of record and the architect of record. They submit a list of qualified individuals to our department. We find a point of acceptance and approval. Then those plans get reviewed independently by a peer, and the report is submitted to our department. Then we either do a plan review or we send it out if the structure is complex. I will tell you, I've spoken with the chief architect for Mohican Sun, and I've known the man for a few years now because he's also a registered building official. And we had a lengthy talk about this the other day. And inasmuch as people think the gaming facility is going to be complex, I would tell you my opinion is that the 5-story concrete parking garage is going to be much more complex than the actual gaming facility. The gaming facility is going to be just under 200,000 square feet, single story, a lot of concrete, bar joists, typical roof. So this is what we're trained to do.
Anything else? Good?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. And I have other copies available. So if anybody needs something. Okay?
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Police Department.
Good evening. So I don't know where you would like to start.
Go through your police department, and we'll do the others after we do the police department.
So, just so you know, the police commission's been dedicated and committed to revitalizing the canine program since the time that we put it to bed, mostly because of the dog retiring and funding not being available. But it's always been our plan to revitalize the program and start the canine program again as soon as some became available, and that time is now. We applied for and received a JAG grant, Justice Assistance Grant, for $38,000. In addition, we moved $12,000 from the private duty fund to also help fund the startup of the program. So our intention is to follow through with that. The JAG grant is not a grant that we can supplant and use that vehicle for another thing. It has to be used for the K-9 program, so we cannot supplant that. The vehicle's already been ordered. And like I said, we've already moved funds to go forward with the program. So that little bit on the K-9 program. Don't know if you have any questions about it.
Well, we should probably talk about what was removed out of the Board of Selectmen.
Right, if you want to go
Related
through
to it,
go through
those
the line by
lines.
line
Yeah, well,
and see where we're at.
At least the K-9 part of it, because some is in overtime, some is in professional services, some is in supplies and equipment.
Mhm. So we can go line by line if you like.
I will tell you that this board approved putting your car money back in the CIP.
For the
when we did the
CIP.
CIP last Thursday.
Yeah, on line.
So that takes care of at least the supplanting part of it.
Well, yeah. So if we start with the first line that was cut, which was the dispatch salary, the Board of Selectmen had cut $76.40 from that. That was for, the amount anyway, would cover an increase in pay for our lead dispatcher, and that would make that dispatcher a lead supervisory position, and would alleviate some of the work that we have to do in a department to oversee that. So it would cover lead supervisory dispatcher duties and responsibilities, includes training, policy development, quality assistance, communications oversight, and be able to liaison with the public safety agencies. We feel that's an important position to keep, or actually to promote. That's one of the first cuts. The next cut was in 51,680, which was officer salary overtime. The Board of Selectmen had cut 48,022 from that. Last year we requested 341, and we were cut to 275. And just so that you'll know, at your next regular Board of Finance meeting, you'll see that we moved 90,000 from our officer salary line to the overtime line because we were definitely going to go in the red otherwise. We've been bleeding overtime with the amount of vacancies that we've had. It's taken us over a year to fill 2 vacancies, and we still suffer shortages of personnel even now due to either injury or illness. And on top of that, we have one of our officers has joined the service, and it's a corporal position, so it's a rank position, and we have to hold that position open for that officer should he ever come back. And I'm not sure if it's an indefinite period or if it's a 5-year period.
5 years. Was it 5 years?
5 years. So that's another vacancy that we have to hold. The overtime line is something that is really going to be important to us.
So just before we go further, I'm just looking, you moved 90,000, which I can see because you're, as of, with 4 months to go, maybe 5, as of the 12th, well, March, April, May, June, so 4.
Yeah.
You're only at 1.1 million of the 2 million we budgeted for salary, so there's money in that line, so we're not have to find it somewhere else for you.
Right, and the reason we have that money is because of vacancies that we've had, so. But we filled those 2 vacancies, so we're paying those officers, even though their training won't be available to us till probably October-ish. But that's where we're at with it.
And the K-9 part of that was 11,000 and something?
Yep, oh, I'm sorry, no.
For the overtime piece. There was a.
It was
section.
$2,000. Any overtime related to animal control emergencies, incidents, and animal care.
$11,022.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, you're right. That's the Garcia money.
Yep.
Correct.
Yes, we did.
You good? Okay. The next cut was in 52,100 professional services. There was a $1,000 cut, which is the cost of the canine medical veterinary services. And the next cut was in 52,200, which was the $3,300 for food and care and contingency of canine. And then the next cut was, I couldn't exactly figure out exactly where all the money worked out to be, but the amount was $12,555. So $12,555 was cut from 52,400 education and dues.
They just cut that back to the current budget.
Is that right?
Yeah, the current budget is 45,041, so that's all they did.
And that fails to recognize the contractual mishap that happened in that line. Remember, last year, in the Burt stripped the 10 grand.
So what's the increase, can you explain the increase?
Last year, they cut that. And we have, we're required to train.
Yeah.
So if we don't train, some of the training is actually post-training, which makes us able to perform our duties as police officers.
The contract makes us keep a certain amount of money for educational, for them to go to college courses. So there's X amount for the SWAT officers, for the dispatchers. It was less last year by 10,000, I think it was. And we were contractually obligated to keep it, but nobody went to school that year. They're talking about doing that. It's money we get back at the end of the year if we don't use it.
And the last cut, which was 52,500 capital purchase, they cut that by half. That was for the portable radar display.
They come in one or two.
So basically, majority of the cuts that are in this were for the K-9 program, which you have a grant to purchase the vehicle and you move funds to purchase dog or whatever.
Right.
Okay. So if you don't have the funds in there, you don't have.
And that's just it, the grant money, we can't supplant that vehicle, so that has to be used as a canine vehicle. It's not something we can change.
Okay. And the officer
It's a
that's.
program that we've had for years, up until just 4 years ago,
4 years.
when everything all applied at the same time.
No, the officer that's going to do the K-9 program is already on the staff, correct?
It'll be one of our officers on staff, and I don't believe we've chosen an officer or had one volunteer as of yet,
Okay.
but ongoing process.
That will happen between now and July.
Gotcha. Any questions from the board members? I mean, overall. So,
Yeah, it has no, they're out of contract for officers and dispatch and clerical. So there's no wage decrease in here at all.
okay.
What's in here is steps. There's people within steps.
Okay.
That's the only money that's in here other than the admin. Those people have contracts. But everybody else is out of contracts.
All right, that's what my question was, that there's nothing for officer salary increase.
No, but that is in my number.
It's in your
That
contingency.
non-negotiated
Can you say number?
wage line has that in there.
Okay, that question? You guys have anything you want to add, say? I mean, overall, it looks fairly flat, except for what was cut. For any other reasons for what you asked for? Anyone have this? You have a question?
I'm kind of curious because these dispatch these contracts are coming due. Is there a deadline when they have to be done or something, or 2 or 3 years before the payment is set? And it's all retroactive, something like a surprise with all my heart. Sounds like the town use for savings account, and those people do not do the contracts. Is there a set date when it has to be done?
Well, they're all out of contract now, so, but being retroactive doesn't change the fact that if you had negotiated it on the day that the contract was up, it doesn't change that. So even though whatever the salary increases may have been, you would still be paying that amount whether you did it that day or if you did it.
Because it seems like he's being.
Well, yes, because time goes by without a contract. and then you see the contract finally negotiated and signed. At that time, you have to pay less. So it's no different than paying the time that
Your contracts just came up recently, or?
we just started negotiating this past year.
That's right now.
Okay.
You're gonna go sit there,
Why?
because it falls
It's
down,
gotta sink.
boom.
It already did.
That sits down. I don't think it can go any further, right? Yeah, no, I'm
I need
good.
the temperature, so.
Okay, if no one has any further questions, we will move on to emergency management. The next category. All looks pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's less than 2%. It's a budget that will focus this year on our plans and operations to streamline some of the new formats that the state requires. So it's roughly 1.97 or 87, I think.
Pretty straightforward. Contains what you need.
Yeah, we're asking for $334 increase.
I see that. Oh.
The expenditures out of the equipment this year, you may notice that we haven't really spent it down. That's because in the latter part of this fiscal year is when we do the major repairs and maintenance on the generators. And that's what that equipment maintenance is for. So that'll all hit.
That's a question on those generators, because that was something that was in the capital project as well,
To replace
to
them.
replace them.
There's several in town that are getting old. Police department is definitely one of them. We've had a lot of repairs on it over the last probably 6 or 7 years.
There's problems with the electricity it generates, right?
It's dirty energy. It's not, so every time, if we have a complete shutdown and it kicks on, we're having problems with it having an adverse effect on the 911 system. So the state has come in and they've put extra UPS systems in there to prevent that from happening. So the last test, it was okay. We didn't have any problems, but that dirty energy that's coming off that is definitely a problem.
So that's definitely something that needs to be, even though it's currently not, well, needs to get replaced, basically.
Yeah.
Because it can damage the equipment that costs us a boatload more money.
Yeah,
If it is.
it's sensitive equipment.
Okay. All right. But we need to maintain at least until we replace, but I hate to throw good money after bad.
Yeah, I agree. I believe it has to do with the transfer switch. That transfer switch is pretty ancient, so, I mean, it's just dumping the power, and so I think it would be a whole gen set, replace the transfer switch in addition to the generator.
Any further questions? No. Okay, and communications, I assume, is you guys as well?
Well, we
Technically
kinda,
not.
we
Really,
kinda
nobody
help out.
owns this one.
Nobody on this
But we'll be happy to answer any questions, because we kind of.
There's just a decrease, and I assume that's because you guys have gone to the new,
No,
no?
I actually made that decrease,
Okay.
and it's because we're not really spending it. We have a $16,000 a year contract, and then the rest is miscellaneous equipment repairs, stuff like that. So if you look at the 3 years, we've spent 19, 21, and 19.
Okay.
So I recommended to the Board of Selectmen to bring it down to 21.5, just based on the 3 years of trends that have been there. I don't know if you guys have a strong opinion that it needs to be a bigger number.
The contract is a pretty strong contract that we have with Marcus, meaning that we pay them X amount of dollars each year, and that if any of our equipment fails, and that's the infrastructure, if anything in the infrastructure, the radio system fails, they will come out and replace that with a part. So it's a good, solid contract. The only problem is if the radios, the mobile radios fail, portable radios fail, or antennas on vehicles fail, then that's not covered by it. So we always try to keep a little bit of money in there in case somebody needs, all of a sudden they have, they have a bunch of portables in a charger, and maybe it takes a power strike and they lose their portables. So we could replace the
That
portables.
covers townwide radios.
Yeah, that's all the radios across the town,
Police,
except
fire.
not the school.
Not the school.
Yeah. But a gang charger could potentially take out 6 portables. They're like $500 a piece in the gang charger. So, we just try to keep a little bit in there. And it's like the chief said earlier about another line. If we don't spend it, we try to give it back to the town.
And then the dispatch is truly a bill from Tolland.
Yep. It is what it is. That's what it is this year.
And then I think your only other one is your police commission, and I don't think there's any change on that.
No, it's just,
It's just your recording person.
somewhere. Yeah, it's $1,500 last year.
$1,500 seems like.
I think I did request 1625.
Did
Like
you?
that one special meeting.
I don't know, it did come through that way on my stuff.
Gosh.
Do you really need 1625?
I suppose Darren can take notes.
So how many, just going back to the police, how many open positions do you have that, do you need?
We're just filling Silver Academy now.
So you're up to your number, it's just not
I'm
on.
missing one because of our military leave. And then the others are temporary because of illness or whatever, so.
Total of 26 officers?
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Broadbrook Fire Department. I believe we have it in the book here. 100.
The very last page, we have 3.
There's only a couple increases you see in the salary line. We're putting in for 2, we're trying to put in for 2 guys, Friday night, Saturday, night, $3. The reason being, Friday nights and Saturday nights, and guys go out with their spouses, vice versa. Guys go out and have a couple beers, they're off the line for the night. Guys go camping with the families, they're not in town, or sports, or whatever it may be. Those 2 nights seem to be our worst nights for getting guys. And the reason the incentive went up is because the way the system works is if we use Jerry for example, because he works during the day, he gets paid the same when he goes to a call office. He works a shift during the day. He has to get paid the same hourly rate, even if he comes back that night for a call. And that's the state of Connecticut, I believe.
Labor law.
Labor law. So that's why we up the incentive, because that's where the money has come from, on the incentive for those after-hour calls. So the guys at work, the guy works a Friday night till 6 in the morning, comes back at 9 o'clock for a call Saturday morning, we have to pay him the same rate he makes Friday night, we're supposed to go on the incentive program. So if the volunteers work the Friday night, they could call during the day and jack up their, so that's why we picked up the incentive call for that.
That's a, I mean, I'm gonna use the term, I mean, not very hypothetical, I mean, it may happen, but it doesn't mean not happen.
We don't know, that's right.
Yeah. Our goal is to use our volunteers rather than hiring outside. And by doing that, that could potentially drive that incentive.
And it's all call driven anyhow, so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Depending on the number of calls, depends on what that number is anyhow.
Right, yeah.
We're just like, that's just the number
We have no idea
Yeah,
what it's going to be, but rough figures based on the 3 or 4 guys that we have now and the calls that they respond to after their shifts, we thought that was a pretty fair number to put in there. And obviously, if it doesn't get spent, it'll come back into the general fund for next year. We'll have at least a starting point of,
a better figure out.
Yeah.
Here. And then the other increase was the insurance, which is our entire insurance, vehicles, our liability, all that stuff.
And that's,
2,000 increase.
that's a definite increase in
Yeah.
negotiating.
yeah.
Alrighty, and then, so you're not looking to, like, over the last couple of years, we've added part-time people during the day. This is just for Friday and Saturday night, the money you guys have.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay.
That was quite easy.
Sure, let's go first.
Pretty straightforward.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Next, we have the Warehouse Point Fire District.
Come aboard.
Section of the report that there isn't a page.
My name's Louis Flynn. I'm the chairman of the Warehouse Point Fire District Board of Commissioners. We're here seeking to straighten out an inequity. I've been here before, we've told you, but let me repeat again the problem. We tax our people for a fire tax. The tax for the taxpayers of East Windsor, whether they live east or west of the Scantic River, pay for the Broadbrook Fire Department. In addition, the town pays for a number of items that don't appear up there for the Broadbrook Fire Department. Putting that aside for a moment, in the recommended budget to you folks is $464,000 for Broadway. I am at a loss, a complete loss, based upon the situation why we don't have $464,000 recommended to pay us. Because what happens is, our taxpayers are paying for 2 fire departments. They're paying for out here, and they're paying for us. To our budget, we worked really, really, really hard and brought it in less than last year. The mill rate remains the same, but we are below where we were last year, and we think we're taking care of things. We've added a benefit, which benefits this side of town. I'll explain to you what. We now are going to have, after July 1st, our budget consists of 5 days a week, weekdays, 3 men on during the day. The new budget will have that, plus an additional 2 men from 11 o'clock in the evening to 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, that's on Tuesday through Saturday nights. So when the horn blows, whether it's out here or Warehouse Point, we have employees going to them, in addition to volunteers. The departments get along fine. They answer our calls, they being Broadbrook, we answer their calls. I tried to say this the other night at the hearing, I don't know if everybody caught it. If you live in Broadbrook and you have the misfortune of having a fire in your house, and you go out and look, you will see 2 different fire trucks. One will have Warehouse Point on the side of it, one will have Broadbrook on the side of it. Men from both units fight the fire. It is inequitable that the taxpayers on the west side of the Scannick River, essentially that's our district, pay for both services. That's not right. Out here, the taxpayers pay in their regular tax that $464,000. So we are put in to the budget for half of that. And I don't understand in a $30 million budget for this town, $30 million plus, what the big deal is in having some equity. I've just told you that what shows up there isn't the real figures. The firehouse out here is provided by the town. The heat is provided by the town. You can go, there's insurance provided by the town. There's administrative costs provided by the town. We pay for all those things. Those are in our budget. And we still have come under budget from last year. So we're trying. And I wish the town had tried harder to help us out.
Can I jump in?
Let me finish one thing, okay? So the long and the short of it is, we're here, you can do anything you want what's up there, I understand. You can add to it, delete it, do whatever you want. But I think it should be even. But if you don't do that, at least do what the selectmen voted and give our people some relief. And that doesn't even count replacement of equipment, which I won't get into at this point, and that's bond issue. But at this point, we are really looking like at 2 different towns. It's not, and it's not right. There is no justification for it. Unless somebody is mad at Warehouse Point for some reason that won't be disclosed, then we're being treated very unfairly.
So a couple of things as going through, I'm new to being a commissioner of the Warehouse Point Fire Department, but I came in just in time for the budget cycle. And so I did see the initial Board of Finance hearing where we came to ask for money and worked really hard we funded a lot of the capital improvements over the past couple of years. So what we've done is reduced the amount that we're gonna have to put into the capital improvement this year in order to fund the overnight during the week, because it's hard to get volunteers. As I'm sure that you guys have seen, it's hard to get people to show up to calls. And part of this is our effort we know that we need to staff. We know that the entire town needs fire department, firefighters on during the week. You just heard Broadbrook ask for people during the weekends. And so part of that is having people 24/7 to be able to respond to any of the fire calls within the state or within the town. We looked really hard at trying to reduce across. And so, as Lou mentioned, we do have a really elaborate budget put together where we tried to, figure out where could we reduce, what makes sense, what capital improvements are coming down the pipe. And we've also put together the memorandum of understanding. Now, that's very light in policy, and I understand it doesn't go into detail as terms of all of the line items in the budget, but it will say that, if we do not end up spending the money, that we will give it back to the town, the same as the police department has said. And in addition, we're working really hard to go through all of the nitty-gritty details of how would the department function, how would it function if we merged with Broadbrook, or all of that as a unit and tax and be responsible for. So there's a lot more detail within that sort of information that we're putting together. Unfortunately, it's, you know, we started the process later, it won't be in time for this budget cycle, but what I would ask the board to consider is putting in some money for us, simply for the fact of the funding of overnight firefighters, I think, is just a benefit towards the entire town, and I can't speak to any of the history of it. I think it's a valuable service to welcome through.
I gotta tell you, you guys are the Board of Finance for the town of East Windsor. Warehouse Point is part of that town, and I think you should be funding the whole thing. We had a public hearing last night on the budget. The budget is $669,000 and change. Without the operating budget, without capital improvement, is $626,357. Between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, I think you have an obligation to provide fire service for the whole town. And this is what it takes over there. This is pretty much what it takes over here, too, because of the extra monies that are in other areas of the budget. This responsibility should not fall on the district. And so that's just my opinion. I'm sure that can't be done. But in order to try to make some steps to resolve the double taxation, as much as possible should be allocated.
Well, I just like to say that, you know, we asked for the same amount as the Broadbrook Fire Department. We couldn't get into all the hidden costs with the capital improvements and the truck repair and the refurbishment of the truck and the upcoming bonding issue that they're gonna bond a, you know, $1 million fire truck. Warehouse Point people are gonna pay for that. And I think it's very unfair. I think this 232 is a kick in the teeth. We should have put at least the 464 in there. I mean, this has been going on 3 years now. And the taxpayers of Warehouse Point have been paying for 2 fire departments. Now you look at the makeup of the boards, not many people from Warehouse Point are paying 2 taxes. You guys aren't paying 2 taxes unless you live in the fire district. And you guys are put in this position to represent the entire taxpayers of East Windsor. And I don't feel that the Board of Selectmen is doing that, and I don't feel like you guys are doing it. It's the responsibility to provide fire protection. And, you know, taking us out of the budget in 15-16, when you took us out of the budget, and the budget only went up 1.89%, well, that was a lie, because the budget actually went up 3.14%, because that $441,000 that was coming to the fire department was redistributed to other departments in town. So it was a bamboozle. I'm tired of paying 2 taxes, and I'm just being honest with you. It's not fair to the people of Warehouse Point. They're tired of it. They come to our meetings and complain about us. And it needs to be fixed.
Is there language in the MOU that says that you'll reduce your mill rate should you get funding from the town, so taxes will go down for people on that side of town?
I neglected to mention that. I've signed a memorandum of understanding with the first selectman that any money given to us as a grant by the town will be used in lieu of taxes. in other words, not used for something else, it will be used to reduce the taxes required of the taxpayers and where else.
Is there any way we could get a copy of that? Or
Send it to you.
I have.
Oh,
No, it's there.
okay.
You should already have it.
Yeah, I checked my email.
I forgot to mention that, I apologize.
Oh, she got it.
And that has been adopted by our Board of Commissioners.
Also, at the public hearing and the commission meeting last night, it was stated, it was part of the motion and so forth, that the mill rate is 1.4, but subject to any grant money coming from this board, the mill rate would be adjusted. If it's 232, that's about a third, the mill rate would, for example, go down probably to 1, so somewhere around there. And that's if the town budget doesn't pass, well, when we do our district budget vote, the town budget probably will not be finalized by then. And the question, when it's drafted, will read that way also, that the mill rate will be 1.4, but it may be something else less. Let me just point out one more thing. During these 3 years, the Warehouse Point Fire District taxpayers have done a lot. We've repaired or replaced roofs on 2 firehouses, air conditioning at Station 1, air conditioning repair at Station 2, driveway, which the parking lot was a sore spot for 10 years before this happened, so that's been redone. A small storage shed was purchased for needed storage space, and a brush truck was purchased. So, the Warehouse Point taxpayers footed all that.
May I say one more thing? I'm sorry, I forgot this. I just want to impress upon you the seriousness of this. Yesterday afternoon, within 1 hour's time, our department answered 4 medical calls. And these aren't horsing around. These are car accidents, but there's also people with overdose on heroin, cardiac arrests, and things, and we're there first. Okay, that police department, we're there first. That's 4 within an hour. And it's lucky we have the people to go to them. And we're not getting any help, and that doesn't make any sense. We're horsing around with other things here on the budget that I can't even believe, but it is primary to protect people's lives and property. And we're not getting any help, and that's just not right, and it's not fair, and I agree with these people. Thank you.
No, I'm good.
Just before you take off, one quick. Yeah.
A few meetings ago, I gave my 2 cents in, and I meant it. And as far as 4 fire calls, well, as a wife of a firefighter for 38 years, and as a firefighter, I had 5 years in there, I bought the mill, 20. I still stand by this. These gentlemen came in for 10 solid years, not 4, but 10 solid years, stating that if we did not do the stuff they wanted us to do, that I felt threatened to say they wouldn't come to a fire. I actually had a firefighter go and ask Broadbrook Chief if he would come in and take care of a fire in case that stuff came through. Nobody else felt that way, but as a former firefighter, I did. And we gave them their wishes. That means that anybody who always said no to money coming through, they can come right back in here. We've got a revolving door. I don't want a revolving door. If we say something, it's got to go. We said no. Sounds like you're doing all right on your own, and I still maintain that no.
Can you conceive what I just said, how
Yes, I
unfair
do.
it is?
Yes,
Why
I
are
do.
you being so unfair?
I'm not. I made a decision.
No, that's being unfair.
No, it's a decision, sir.
It's a decision. Tell them where the decision comes from, Mrs.
I have
Deborah.
one question. Just for numbers, the overnight people, that you guys are putting on.
Yes, sir.
What's your cost of that?
Just for the overnight?
I'm just curious.
I think it's an additional 71,000.
For just the
See, it
overnight?
was added to the ones we
I could
already
get
had.
you. I can get you the exact number,
But you know it's
That's your
Total
range.
is about
It's around
70.
71,000.
71, just under.
And we did that,
Two
we
overnight.
kept, we were lower than last year, our budget. We added that benefit, which is very important, and we're lower than last year.
I didn't bring a lot of copies, but that's the summary, that's the notice that went in the newspaper about the public hearing last night. And the proposed budget, I have a copy of that too. I mean, if you want this and make copies for yourself, you can have this.
Yeah, just,
Or we could email it out to one of you guys tomorrow and you guys can all share it. I mean, we're not.
That would be good.
Because there is an analysis of
If you
how much
send
it
it
would
to
cost
me,
for overnight.
I'll send it back.
Yeah, they'll
I'll
She'll
send,
shoot it
I'll
to
send
all
it
of us.
out to you tomorrow and then you all can have it
Yep, that's perfect.
electronically. You can see what, I mean, we're not hiding anything, so.
that's not about my point, I just was curious what.
No, I
What
understand.
that costs for increasing.
I think
So
the additional guys for the overnight, Tuesday through basically Sunday morning was an extra 71,000 in the compensation line, but obviously there was additional payroll costs and some workers' comp that was a little bit of an increase for that.
Well, like I said, I respect what you and Broadbrook have done in trying to maintain a volunteer service and not going to a full-time fire department. I can respect that on both departments. And because it's obviously, if it's a full-time fire department, it's a lot more money than we're talking about right now.
Trying to get a blend of.
Yeah, and I think that's the way we have to go, because volunteers, back when the volunteer fire department was set up, it was more of an agrarian, farming, local workforce, and we don't have that anymore. We all move around. So I understand, it's the way to keep the town budgets in check. I'm just curious what the extra cost of that is.
You
But the
know,
thing
you
is,
didn't
that's
have.
likely coming.
Oh, I understand.
And we all have to work together because, a full-time fire department is going to be pretty similar to the police department. You know what that costs. And we can't do two full-time fire departments. We need to get together.
Well, we can't pay for two. And just to, on the whole volunteer side, the other thing that has changed in the last several years was the amount of training that the guys have to do and the call volume. We've increased, our calls have gone up. Back when I first was the fire chief, we were doing 230 calls a year. Now we're doing 500, 600 calls a year. So call volume's increased, traffic's increased, and the training is definitely increased. That's why it's so hard for a guy to join the fire department. Basically, he has to go to 196 hours of school just before he can get on the truck. So.
Bill, as a liaison from the board to two fire departments, can I comment or not?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Just so you're aware, to give you a little insight that I have spent time with both departments, and everybody works hard, and everybody said no matter who you talk to and all the positions and people come before you. And I can certainly attest that to here. But I think what you really don't get a flavor for is that how serious they take their expenses. I sit there in these meetings and, geez, we gotta buy this, we have to do that, well, what, and they look for alternative measures to see if they can reduce that cost. It isn't the same old, well, we always bought it here, so we'll buy it there kind of thing. They look at things very carefully, and I think that's really important, in government, that people aren't just taking advantage of, they'll just pass it, they'll do it, or they won't pass it, whatever. But that's one thing. Unfortunately, when things changed 3 years ago, that there weren't some measures, financial measures taken that would have supported the budget at a later time if it didn't work out separating and or having a district come back alive again. But we are where we are, and I think it's up to the people in government, people that are running and have control over money, that we try to do the fairest thing that we can do for as many people as we can. And I think that's very crucial here. And the thing that I think would really help is that if you decide that the $240,000 could be done for this year, you know, that relates to almost a 40% reduction in how much money they have to collect. And right back to going to the homeowners and businesses, and that's material. And I think the 240 is certainly not a number that is insurmountable in the budgets that were submitted to you all from the Board of Selectmen for government.
Thank you. All right. Is that all set?
Thank you.
That concludes the presentations to the Board of Finance. I'm going to take 5 minutes before we go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And move to take a 5-minute recess.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah,
5
voted.
minutes.
I voted for once in my life. I'll take my seat back now. Oh, look, you just like pushed my chair back. Nice. I gotta go to the restroom.
Cool, buddy. How are you? Watching that street where I live, buddy.
Drag my butt back over here. What's in front of me?
Is this your bill or my bill?
No, that's your building.
Okay, sure.
She's really tiny though.
How was your pasta?
Oh my gosh, really good. Really, really good. But crazy. They went from 7 pounds to warm up. 6 months of Chicago that I got in Costco. And it was half 10 things of magnitude. That's how many boys? Well, it's boys and girls, like the other, but they still.
Oh, it is?
They were still massive. But it worked out well, except that it was really hard to fit in. Good thing was oil pants, and you cushion them and they bend a little. Come on out, well, good, make more mac and cheese. Because that was first.
Like worked up as a compressor.
It's a hole in the hole.
Yeah,
Right under it.
and the only place they go is right next to the foundation. And out the street where it started.
They like to do that. They have these-
There's too much paperwork. It's really hard to stay organized.
It's less expensive. They can do that.
There's a lot.
It's less, I mean, because
You don't have to go dig everything out.
it's like a road.
Is that hard? Oh, wow, okay. When you bring it, I could say no when it was over there, but if you're gonna bring it to me, I'm gonna have one of these. These are just solid chocolate. Yes, they're good for you though. Okay, there we go, yes, thank you. Dinner. You didn't eat? Right? Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. Just a really good time of the year.
Would it work? Is your fiscal year? What you saying? I'm saying. That makes sense.
But it's the end of the quarter and I volunteered this year to do income taxes. I do that on Wednesday nights. So I had to trade the last 2 Wednesday nights.
Where are you volunteering to do income taxes?
So I just try to put them in my mouth. I'm totally on my teeth. It's through United Way, and it's called VITA.
You're talking to me.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
The
baby.
certified food
Oh,
we do them for low-income people, so 35,000 or less a year.
If I'm next time I see you, I'm like,
I do it at community college.
oh, yeah.
So this is my first year doing it. It's interesting. It's been really interesting. They do them for the seniors. Yeah, they've got a bunch of different locations. I picked that one. Is it the same organization? I'm almost positive it is. Oh, okay. I picked this because it just worked out better for my son. A lot of them start at 4:30 and I think they get out. So this one started at 6, so one day a week I forget. How long do you stay? It's supposed to be till 9. Twice it was till 10 or 10. Makes for late night. And then you have to get up the next morning. Yeah.
Really?
What happened to the meeting?
Sort of coffee, I don't know if it's from tree pollens out already. You know, all of a sudden, it's
Everything green.
Police department doesn't have anything in their budget for gasoline. They used to have it in there. All the gasoline is the town property. It used to be underneath the police department. I think they're spending a lot of money on gasoline up here that should be in their budget.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Well, you were gone. She hand-delivered it over here. It was fantastic.
You don't get
I
it.
found my wife's text.
Did you find your wife's?
Yes.
I don't even have anything.
All right.
I gotta get back on my page.
I'll never know them all.
I will.
It's good for you.
Yes. You have back in my place. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I will relinquish the chair. I call the meeting back to order at 8:12 and relinquish the chair back to the chairman who is now here.
All right, so now do we want to return to what we need to finish up from the week before?
That makes sense.
Yep, so. Where were we sitting the week before?
We were at town planner, I believe.
Town planner, and were we at selectmen, or did we finish selectmen?
Selectmen we approved.
Yep.
Selectmen we approved.
Yeah, I'm down to the building department would be tonight in town planner.
Town center is the first one you did through that has a conference.
What had us, we had open-ended questions, but I felt like she answered them all.
The planner?
Oh, the planner, yeah. Aha, I remember. You guys were questioning the salary part-time. Correct? Is that what you were discussing the level?
He came actually talking about.
Called it a night.
He actually came and talked about not doing a part-time salary, but adjusting up his clerical salary to be a planner position and move the money up to full-time versus
right.
Was
Which
the
the, yeah, which the selectmen changed.
Yes, the selectmen, he put in for, right, he actually put in for the third planner, leaving as part-time. The Board of Selectmen didn't approve the third position, but then gave him part-time clerical help.
So you guys were looking at that. What were you questioning? What were your?
I didn't really get a feel for what exactly you want to do with a full-time / part-time person from his presentation to us.
When did he come in?
First one.
Very first night.
No, to his position, sorry.
Oh, no, mid-December.
Sorry about that.
Mid-December.
So he's been here
Emergency.
January, February, March, 3 months? At the most. And already knows he needs a full-time person?
I thought he put together a really compelling business case for some additional help. I mean, he came complete with flow charts and, you know, he had a lot of support for the increase in workload. So maybe he wasn't definitive about how he was going to use the part-time person, but there were a lot of ways he could have spread it, I guess.
I think one of the big things is the job descriptions that exist within that department already. That certain things,
good point,
that are supposed to be done by the people that are already there that really aren't being done. So you don't just find another person because the other ones aren't doing that, even though it's in their job description. That would be a little bit of my problem.
He put it for strategic plan. He put it in as a strategic planner, the new full-time position, and then I believe the selectmen gave it to him as a part-time position.
Did we not also put in for the economic development guy though? Correct?
No.
No? Okay, so they booted that?
Yes.
See now, personally, to fund a subcontractor versus a person that's going to come on to payroll, it's kind of something
And
I
the Board
prefer
of
to
Selectmen
do.
did do that. They gave him back the $20,000. So when they cut the strategic planner out of here,
right,
and gave him part-time clerical help, they also gave him back the $20,000 tied to professional services, which this year is also in there, which should be being used for EDC-related things.
Right, oh, okay, that's what
So they did put it back. When they cut the strategic planner, they did put back professional services.
yeah, that's what I meant.
Yep,
So it's back in there.
it is back in there.
So there's part of that was always originally there to be the economic development person or strategic.
Yeah, to hire it out, but
Yeah, it's a subcontractor.
this year it hasn't been used as much as in the past, but again, we were out with our planner for a while too, so,
Yeah. Well,
for a period of time, I don't know.
we had an interim planner, but.
And then the other change is mine. It's the $4,500 pulling the advertisement out
Right.
of professional services that I did for every other department that I
Right.
advertised.
Yeah, good, which made sense. Makes sense.
I guess I'll move to not fund the part-time salary position and give the planner office $13,315 to maintain the current staff under the part-time.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
We currently have employees that should be fulfilling their duties. We shouldn't just be hiring new people.
Okay, but don't you think you put a decent argument in terms of what the increased workload has been from last year and then what he's projecting it to be with things that are on the books already?
I mean, some of that I think can go to the, get hired to, not an employee, through professional service. I think some of that can be done.
Well, he's been here 3 months.
Some subcontract.
And none of that professional service money's been used. So.
Wasn't that supposed to be for, in lieu of, that 26.5 was supposed to be in lieu of hiring a person, right?
Yeah, that's what it was last year, yeah.
That's what it was last year.
Okay, so.
But again, we switched planners in the course of the year,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera.
It never happened.
It didn't happen, but.
So now, the part-time is in there and the in-lieu money is in there, so.
My quote, I was going back to the way it was last year, let them get another year and then look at it next year to see where we're at. That's where I was going, but it's just my opinion.
That's okay.
You're saying get more time in his position under his belt to really be able to decipher what that department's gonna do and how it's gonna
How
run.
it's gonna run, get, you know, that's my opinion.
Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes.
I will move to put the professional service under town planner at $22,000.
It's already
Oh,
there.
shit,
You're
yes.
fine.
I'm a farmer, I'm sorry. Yes, it's already there.
We've all done it, but
It is the first time for everything for me. All right, so I guess I don't have to make that. I was looking at the wrong line. I was looking at the line before the selectmen adjusted it, so that was my mistake. Okay, we don't have to do that. We're good, sorry.
It's okay. Any other questions on any of the line items? All right, so does anybody want to make a motion to approve the budget?
I will move to approve town planner at $243,032.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Building is done tonight. We can-
I don't think, do we have anything left?
No.
Oh, town council.
Town council.
You guys want to wait until even the 15th, so I'll have more of the little bit.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. I think we'll,
I think that's it for previous ones, not past.
Yeah.
okay.
So that, well, Board of Education. That one.
Well, Board of Ed's gonna be,
So let's look at building, I guess, because he was here tonight. He did leave something for you, I think, your spot.
I have it, I just asked for it.
That's yours.
Yeah, I put it in here. Yep. So I missed it, so I'm gonna let you guys kind of, fill in any blanks or start it,
I
go with
did
it.
ask about the new hire doing data entry, and I also did ask about view permit. And he claims that the view permit, every department has their own, and the building department is last in the funnel, so they're not the ones holding the process up. I have a,
I don't know if that's the whole holding the process up, as if somebody has to take the bull by the horns. kind of
right,
thing.
it's not being overseen, and
Could I speak to that? I can tell you what happens with that if you want. I mean, it's just a simple little thing I have.
That's fine.
I have to sign off on view permit as the fire marshal in Warehouse Point.
Yep.
If I don't sign off on it because I'm neglecting to sign off on it, or I just don't feel like doing it, it holds the whole process up. So what he said is true.
Yeah, oh no, that's,
we're aware of that.
yeah, what
Okay.
we're trying to do, there needs to, well, I'll kind of address it here because I'm not supposed to do that. There needs to be a department and a person in that department that holds everybody responsible and can pull from each section so that we stop holding it up that way and we
Okay,
get
I said
expedite
the same
things
thing,
and.
but they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, and so our goal here this year in the budgeting process is that we find a department, number one, that wants to take that process under task. Everybody seems to be not my job one, and we need somebody to take that task because that's what's holding up a lot of stuff. So that's what we're reaching out for. So, yes, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
So, you didn't get the answer you wanted.
Right, I
telling me.
wanted,
Okay.
yeah, I wanted to say, okay.
Okay, long and short of it. Long and short of it. What else?
He did talk about increase in volume and tried to present that to us with the information he gave us, so that they're anticipating for permits. I mean, we did give $25,000 for $20,000 for professional services last year. Some of that was used for his, well, he's out on injury this year, so I think there's sufficient dollars there based on where we're at for some of the projects coming in to have outside assistance with that. You know, I don't know that adding another full-time person.
Can I interrupt a second? Only
Sure.
because I wasn't here, I'm sorry.
Yep.
So if I look at like 11, 12, 13, and 13, 14, he had 28,000, almost 29,000 in permits, 29, right? Am I reading this right?
Yes.
29,000, then 21,000, then 14, 15, it went way down. And 15, 16, and 16, 17 were even less. And 18 bumped up, but it's about the same that 12, 13, and 14 were. Oh, 12 and 13.
Yeah, 11 and 12, we said it was when Walmart came in. That was the Walmart project. He did list.
I can share what the big numbers are, 18 are. There was a solar farm and Calmer,
Yeah.
the 121 unit.
In Calmar.
Oh, the solar farm?
The solar farm is a big piece of it. It was like $6 million of building permit.
Oh.
And then the other one was Calamar, which is 121 unit. I had to research them for our S&P trading meeting. So those are the two big pieces of the 28 million.
Is Calamar the one with the general?
Yeah, they're stopped though.
Yeah, they're stopped.
But supposedly because we start short. And then he listed the big projects that are currently possibly in the works, so. Again, me personally, I'm not for adding positions in town. I'd rather see it done if there's going to be an increased workload that we can hire out through contract services. That's where my look would be, is in the professional services, not through more full-time people.
Subcontractors.
Yeah, subcontracting, inspections and whatever else we need to do.
And how much is he out on that line?
It's got 20.
20.
He was 5,800, most of that was, he said, was used when he was out with his injury.
When he hurt his, yeah.
So, my gut is to stay as is and go with professional services for outside inspections and reviews and whatever else, if the review is not going to be done in the building department office. That's my opinion.
You mean the consolidation for review permit?
Yeah,
being
review
in
permit,
charge
yes.
of making sure everything. So he still has, right now, $14,000 left in his professional services that he hasn't needed to utilize.
Yeah, and again, a lot of that was used while he was out, so he didn't really,
Right.
if he wasn't out with his injury, a lot less of that would have been used this year.
And if some of these projects come to fruition, sorry.
It's okay.
If some of these projects come to fruition, you can always bring in more contracting. Sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
Okay. I'll move to make the salary full-time line in building $131,355.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? Is this, oh, this is one of the departments with your line for payroll at the bottom because the contracts aren't done, correct, Annie?
Well, this is one of the ones that has additional staff in it, so it has medical insurance.
Okay, so we
in it.
have to.
That would have to be removed. But yeah, so that would be one of the ones that would have to be reduced, along with FICA.
Okay, so that'll come. All right, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Were you aye? Oh, sorry. Opposed? Okay, motion passes.
So are you giving him back his part-time person?
Yes.
I'll move to make part-time salary in building, $16,539.
No. 16,870.
16 what?
16,870.
870.
You get the 2% raise.
Is there a second?
One second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move to approve building department at $173,970.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
If, I suppose there's my only question, I mean, I guess if he blows out his professional services line, because we do get some of these, if the whole casino type thing is another ballgame too, but that's, that would come out of the.
We'll be back asking.
Yes.
Well, that
That would come out of the $3 million.
should be part of
Well,
that.
it would have to be an additional appropriation still for you guys.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they would have to come forward with an additional appropriation. You could use that extra revenue as your source versus fund balance,
Yeah.
but it would still have to go through all the same steps.
Steps and procedures.
And once that money comes in the door, it would be a very quick turnaround for needing that money. So yeah, if he runs out of money for professional services, we'll be back because he has no other lines.
Right.
So it's not like I can cover it within his budget.
Yep.
So I will be back for an additional appropriation if too many things happen all at once.
But that would make sense.
I'll be back for an appropriation.
Okay.
That was my only other question, so. okay.
All right. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Because then it's the police department. do that. What's that mean?
Was better than shit.
Yeah, it was better than that.
Agenda stops presentation.
Carolyn, seeing more here, do you want to run down what changed? What got changed by the selectmen?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is a dispatch supervisor position that didn't get funded. The piece that got funded is steps. So this line, and this line are all tied to people who are in steps still. So this is just steps. All three of these units are out of contract. But the 7,000 that got cut out of here was tied to promoting a dispatcher to be the dispatch supervisor, overseeing the dispatchers. Here, they gave them more money because their trend is higher, so they're giving them $25,000 more. But the piece that is out of here is the $11,022 tied to the K-9 officer. And then they had also asked for another $37,000 that did not get funded. Here is tied to the K-9 officer, the $1,000 that didn't get funded is tied to the professional service for vet care for the K-9. And then the supplies and equipment has $3,300 that was cut out of here tied to the K-9. Uniforms, they just cut them straight to this year's budget. The police said that there's $10,000 that should have been funded and had been inadvertently left out. They have a requirement within each of the contracts to set aside a set dollar amount. That is the amount they requested. But if you look at trend, it's not. It hasn't been what they've spent because people have not necessarily gone to school. So the Board of Selectmen cut them to what they are currently. And then they asked for 2 portable speed signs, and the Board of Selectmen funded one of them.
Question I forgot to ask when you presented earlier. they talked about you have a position you have to keep open because of the person went to the military or whatever. Was his salary still in the budget?
No, we're no longer paying, he's not on the payroll anymore.
So the 2,021,000 takes him out. Okay.
So, in the dispatchers where they took that money out, they took the ability for you guys to promote somebody? Clarify
Yeah, it's a
that?
lead position within dispatch.
It's a new, it's
Yeah.
a new supervisory role
Mhm.
that isn't currently in there, but yes.
So as it is now, all the training and everything else that we do in dispatch has to be done by the officers. Whereas if we can give him a lead position, let him handle all the training and everything else, it would be a sore load for the officers. It's just one portion.
So what was the rationale, because I wasn't here for, I did some of the selectmen workshops on TV, but not all of them, and I didn't do the police. What was the rationale with the K-9? Did they just think it was not necessary? What
No,
did
they just felt that trying to keep the budget low with other things that are already in there, that they didn't just feel that they could fund it this year. The total, I think, is 15,000 and change across the three lines, which is the operating portion of it. Does that sum that up? Does that sum that up? Well, because you were in the room.
You were there.
Well, I believe we need to put the canine supplies and whatnot back in. If we already have an approved grant for $38,000, that if we don't take advantage, we could lose. And it's approximately 15,000, I think, was the numbers that were run approximately on that. It's supposed to be.
That's what I guess I told them.
Yeah, there's 3,000 here and 1,000 there and 11,000 of the, so I'll move that we, under supplies and equipment for the food and et cetera for the dog, put $3,000 back in under supplies and equipment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh.
Motion passes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't vote motion on.
That's all right.
Okay.
Hold on, let me catch up. You got messed up right now.
I sent everything off in the wrong column. I added them all back, but I added them to the selectmen's section instead. Okay, so you're going to approve the 16 becoming the 19.
That's correct.
That's number 1. Sorry. I thought it was on mute.
I will move under professional services, we had $997 back in. Well, let's just make it 1,000, make it easier math. To make it 33,931.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And under officer salary overtime, I would like to add the $11,022 in to make it $311,022.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion still passes. So, the uniform issue,
Uniforms is the same.
yeah.
It's
So,
education and dues.
all right, was it education and dues?
Yeah.
All right, so they haven't used it, but they could use it. So are we?
Well, we're contractually
Right.
obligated
I didn't get that far. So, it's a contract, that's not typically something we play with.
Yeah, but it's a pool of money that not necessarily always gets used.
Mhm.
So, do a return if we don't use it. And they will.
Well, but if we don't, I mean,
If for some reason all people wanted it and they needed the 57, we would have to come back and appropriate or transfer it from somewhere else. There is an obligation.
right,
So if it's not individually funded within this line, it could be something that would have to be asked for if everybody took advantage of it.
right. Which where's my trade?
They're all in 39, I
Yeah.
think, but 39, 560, 38, 463, 39, 168.
The uniform account, should that be used as something as a savings account for them?
You know, they have to buy specific
By
articles.
just uniforms, they can't just switch it around. Something else that
And they pretty much have, if you look at your 3 years trending, they've used what they've budgeted every single, close to
That's a
exactly.
contract thing too, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken.
The officers' vests are also funded on that uniform.
I remember that, yeah.
Just not a good thing. All right.
But, anybody have any other questions or any other changes or?
Just the thought on the supervisor, the bump up to the supervisor for the dispatcher. Anybody done that one? Anybody?
There's 6 people. I don't think you need a supervisor.
I can hear you.
Oh, I don't think you need a supervisor.
So you guys are all right with it up?
Well, if the officers have to do it, they're probably doing it on overtime, which costs more money than probably the supervisor would cost, but I don't know for sure. Is that correct, Bob?
Well, the officer salaries are higher than the dispatch to begin with.
But are they doing it on overtime or are they just regular time?
Depending on scheduling. Anything this year has been all on overtime.
And what was the selectmen's rationale cutting it? You both are here.
I
There was one.
don't think there was a set, I just think they thought, you know, in the budget as lean as it is to create a new supervisory position, I don't think I think it was a dollars and cents thing. I don't think they really gave a overall of why.
I'll move it, and then if we fail it, we fail it, so.
It's actually
I'll move we,
0.93%.
add $7,200 to the dispatcher salary line.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, on to more discussion?
7640?
Whatever, the 7205.
7205.
No, 7205 is a current increase. The
Oh,
amount that was
yeah.
cut out of there was 7640.
For the discount. There's still an increase in there from the.
Oh, I missed
The increase in there is from the steps,
Okay. So you need, what's the number you need?
7640.
All right, so I'll move it, I'll just change my motion to be 7640 as long as the second agrees.
Any more discussion? Can you change it just real quick, so I can see the increase?
And just remember, 3 of these don't have contracts. There's no
Yep.
salaries for these 3 categories.
There's way too many lines like that in this budget this
I
year, it's
know.
ridiculous.
Well, with 4 contracts being out of contract.
It's ridiculous. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, motion still passes. I'm gonna go for the total.
Were we going to discuss moving the
see our bottom line number before.
Yeah,
Consider
so
it.
do
Yeah, we
we,
can-
do we want to approve, we can go back?
Oh, we can, if we
Yeah,
approve it, we can still go back if you decide that you're going to add to, yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So I'll move we approve police department for $3,421,370.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion's 3-2, still passes. But like I said, doesn't mean you can't go back.
That's what I
So,
thought.
yeah.
This is not what we take, thank God.
All right. That's pretty straightforward.
I move we approve emergency management in the amount of $18,206.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
And this piece, the stipends are still going up, and it's not, so their stipends still going up.
The stipend covers 3 people, covers the chief as the chief of emergency management, covers the deputy as deputy of emergency management, and it covers a admin person.
It's
So
still going
it's
up.
shared between 3 people.
It's still going up.
$191 across the 3 people.
I would think they give us voluntarily wages to me.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Me.
Motion still passes.
I'll move we approve communications for $49,168.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Want to just go do police as soon as we get it done?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 1,500. I'll move we approve police commission for $1,500.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is it?
Was it?
I don't think it's.
I guess as far as Broadbrook Fire Department goes, I'm good. I understand the need to, as I said earlier, to, it's harder for volunteers to be staffed, and I think we're trying to cover it the best we can and still do the services we need. And, we've been increasing it over the years, as you can see from the budget. When it comes down to, staffing the fire department, I don't think it's unreasonable to put that extra $20,000 in there to give them the extra 2 positions for the nighttime positions they're looking for. Again, that's my opinion, so. The incentives, I understand where they're coming from. Again, they're trying to put a number in there that they feel they might need. And again, I can agree with that. So on Broadbrook, I'm good. Interesting to hear just the opinion of the board on the warehouse point and the Broadbrook and the rest of it.
Well, I'm new to a lot of the politics in town, but I thought that the people that spoke had an incredibly compelling argument for wanting to make amends and to fix it. Now, a lot of thoughts go through my mind on why do we have 2 separate and why don't we have one and one person overseeing it, but that's probably a much bigger question than the scope of, or answer to the scope of the question. But I live on the Broadbrook side. I'm not double taxed. I don't think it, personally, I don't think it's fair. I think we should be finding a way to budget for both fire departments around the same time. One girl's opinion.
It's a good opinion. Hello? Trying to get everybody, but everybody's quiet.
I stated my piece.
This is true. Sarah?
I do agree with Barbara. I do live on this side of town. However, this board does represent the whole town. I would like to see this move in the right direction to bring the two towns together, so I do believe that they should get some funding.
Oh, I agree that it's unfair, and I agree that they deserve to get some funding also.
All right. Well, that leaves you figuring out what that funding is.
Did the original funding go to the police department before?
What do you mean?
When we took the 460, 450 that they wanted to throw away, do we do that to the PD? That should be interesting.
Huh?
That's what I'm saying, years ago, when they wanted to give the town the money, and they had no problem about it, I think part of that went to the police department. They came right into it. I don't know.
Looks like the last time they were in here was at 335 and 1516.
That doesn't count the incentive money that the town was paying at the time.
PD didn't get any,
And the dispatch fees that we took
It
over.
was absorbed through the entire, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was answering the question. Go ahead.
Well, that number doesn't include everything that was taken out because the town was paying the incentives, so half of that came out and half of the dispatch fees came out because we paid them over there when we came out of the budget. So that number's a lot higher.
Insurances, workers' comp,
So that stuff came out along with that.
Was it 441 again?
It's 441, that's
Yeah.
right. That's what I figured out today.
To answer your question, no, I don't think it went to the PD. I think it was absorbed into the entire budget between just typical
2%
increases and 2% cuts. Along with them stepping out, the budget kept dying at 2% every year after. So it really was just absorbed by the loss of money we were getting at 2%. You can't live on 2%. So, not when, this kind of stuff. So, to answer your question, no, it was just absorbed by the entire budget and maybe, well, you can disagree, but look at the math. It's kind of hard to disagree with math. But
We're going to have two or three other departments come in and say, we got it too. Go ahead. Instead of bad precedent.
well, so you all agree there should be something.
Agree there should be something.
Now we need to agree what that dollar amount is.
Right.
I mean, I think one of the things,
Is that numbers that you have there?
That's their
what was the paper?
It was our 669.
669, yeah.
Broke down a little bit?
Yeah.
Yep.
I emailed the entire budget to Amy. She's got it now on her town email, so she can send it out to you guys.
Okay.
I mean, if you guys want to, when's our next meeting? I don't know my calendar.
Thursday.
Thursday?
Thursday night.
If you want to wait till you go over what he emailed,
That's a good
and
idea.
Yeah.
go home and
That's a
figure
great
out a
idea.
dollar amount,
Yeah.
what you feel, all of you, separately, and then bring it together Thursday. We can do like we did last time and start the meeting with discussing the dollar amount, if that's something that you guys want to do.
Okay.
Can do that. We can absolutely do that.
And that is the last of the things we went over already.
Five minutes left if you want to call that 9.
So
Well, it depends on how everybody's feeling. The other
Well,
night, everybody was done.
we could talk a little bit about capital. I can send you guys a couple policies today.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
Interestingly, we have two capital policies. One's called the capital asset policy, and the other one's called capital improvement plan policy,
Okay.
which talks about the $20,000, but it does look like it could be projects grouped together. So to answer your police car question, I think it can stay in the CNR. I think this one really needs to be called the capitalization policy, because that's where it says an individual item, not group, meeting the threshold requirement for $7,000 for machinery and equipment. So I think this is really the capitalization to put it on our books. I think this is more an accounting policy, where the capital improvement plan policy is about your group and how they rank, and whether it's mandatory or critical or scheduled.
So like my math lab would work?
If it's more than 20, yes.
If it's, as a group, it's more than 20.
Yes. Because this policy only has a $20,000 minimum in your capital improvement plan policy. So that's $20,000. So it doesn't say it can't be grouped together. It can't be a group of things. So that policy is different.
So that one project for the Board of Education for the Mac lab that they're talking about
Yes.
comes to more than 20,000.
Yes.
But some of the smaller items do not,
Would
so
not.
they still do not qualify
Right.
for those.
Yeah, we
And
have to
nor
look
does
at
the
all of them again.
$10,000 of tools for DPW, because that one got cut from 20 to 10. So now it falls under the 20 minimum that's required to be in CIP.
See, but that's why they need to look at that again. They just willy-nilly cut these things. So now that can't be in CIP, they need it, and in order for it to be in CIP, it has to be that $20,000. And that's why they can't just just
I
randomly
just thought
cut.
these would be helpful, but I do think we need to readdress the name. I think we need to call this a capitalization policy, so we don't have two capital asset policies.
Gotcha.
So
So
I
you're
did
thinking
send them out
that's
to you
more
guys.
like an accounting though?
I
Anyways.
do, because where it talks about useful lives, it talks about what we're gonna put on our books. So this is really a capitalization, how we're gonna record them. This is really your instructional, and it does say, projects must be for town-owned or leased property with a cost in excess of $20,000. And that's the only dollar value on this entire policy. Where the other capitalization has lots of dollar values.
Interesting. So where was that?
I emailed it today.
No, not that, I have that.
It's in this
My little
section.
doodle from the Board of Ed.
It's
I don't think there was too much,
Projects.
unfortunately. The only one was the 3 smart boards.
Yeah, they were 20,000, right?
Yep. The Mac lab isn't enough, it's
Well, it's
12,700.
12,000.
Yeah. So nothing else is high enough.
So, but if you said you can group things together, right? What kind of groups do they have to be? Well, no, I'm just saying, because like they had that whole volleyball nets, and they had the whole uniforms, and they had the sports equipment. That's kind of like an athletic group. Am I pushing my groups?
Are you thinking towards this budget and CIP? Or are you thinking your spending of your fund balance down?
I'm thinking of spending the fund balance down, but then depleting their budget so that their budget isn't a 7.96% increase, but they're still getting the necessary things that they need.
So your fund balance policy doesn't say it has to be capital. It just says you guys get to pick how it's spent.
Because this is, if you can get that, you know, how to write it.
That's what I'm saying. That was my whole, when we went through this the other night. That it's, I hear you back there.
Humanity balance, fun.
You got part of that fun. Won't see my bathrooms yet. Just saying.
Well, I think we need to research.
So I think you can consider that $77,000 as part of your spend down of the fund, excess fund balance, to answer that question.
I didn't remember it was 77,000 too.
She's got it written down.
I have a list,
You kill me.
and numbers are what
Just
my
so
job
good.
is. You will trust somebody to
Did
remember those things.
I tell you how much I appreciate you? I do.
Thank you.
I do. Yeah. So that's what I think is a good answer right there too for them. That's taking $78,000 off of their budget. There are some major questions that, well, actually, I don't have my, but I had Amy and I had talked that we shot over to the Board of Ed. Some things in their budget that we are not wholly understanding. I have it on my phone, which I probably won't be able to read.
Well, I was really just checking their employee benefits lines to make sure they matched what I thought they would.
You sure you don't want to
And
try
I
those
still didn't
glasses?
confirm one of the things. They said their pension includes their OPEB, where we have separate lines on the
Oh, we
top side.
answered it?
They answered that one. And the insurance, I have to go back and look at again. They had a swap between, you looked in their two lines, the total budget versus the local portion.
Right.
One was only going up $472,000, the total, but then the local portion was going up $630,000 or $603,000. But I didn't, the answer I got back didn't answer my question. And he said I wasn't using latest numbers because when he handed it out the other night, I didn't get clean numbers. I had the original ones that were handed out at the public hearing.
Yeah, but the number I have is the one he gave us, and it's $600,000.
Is it still 603
Yeah,
on the
just-
insurance?
It's, the local is,
For health insurance. Yeah, see, the new one that he sent me today now only has a 256 under medical and dental insurance.
Yep.
But 387 is the local.
Right.
Which still is the same part, I still have that same question. How can your total be less than the local share?
Right.
So my question just isn't answered, and I don't have that answer still.
Okay. I don't think, yeah. That's questionable.
Repeat what you said about the others.
can you just for, can you take the, what was that number, 77,000 out of there, that for the, out of the school budget, just to see where it drops?
What percentage, Jen?
We'll just round, it's actually more, so just round it up to 78. It's like 5 round up.
Round up, okay. Gotcha.
Round up.
Still starts with a 7.
Well, one of the biggest things, if you look, that is killing them is that in their budget of this year, on the very last page, in their budget, the tuitions under special education, if you look at the public in-state, private in-state, this year they're at 340, and they are over $1 million in their budget. So that is just huge.
Yeah, the total.
Actually, FY20 is the total private in-state, 1.418896, an increase of $1 million.
Well, when you, but there's some deductions, but when you total all the tuitions
Right.
for special ed, it's plus $548,000
Right.
for tuitions.
So right there is, it's taking a huge chunk out of their, just their regular budget. Their, all their other budgets. That's why it's so high. We still have to get answers to the insurance questions and the stuff like that, but I don't know. That's it. If you want to wait for the answers to those questions, that come back with names for health insurance and pension and. Excuse me. Yeah, well, that was another one of Bill's questions he asked and didn't really get an answer to, is why the custodian salaries are up 10%.
Plus they're adding people or something, I don't know.
How much had it gone up?
Just, it speaks by school that they were in there.
I think each school was 10%.
Yeah. Which, I mean, granted, in the whole state of the budget is
Yeah.
peanuts, but it's still quite a bit of work.
Right, since right now you're looking at 6%. We haven't done the revenues, and the revenues, I mean, you might as well take a peek at the revenues if we're gonna stay here for a minute, because she's just gonna give us bad news.
I was just gonna say, I sent you more bad news on that today.
Yeah.
Sorry. So the
What did I tell you how much I appreciate you?
the new grand list came out with the Board of Assessment Appeals and court case changes. It went down another $2 million. So unfortunately, it now puts us, if I take the current grand list that was signed off by the assessor at the current tax rate, it puts us $162,000 behind now with those adjustments that were made through appeals and court cases.
And that just,
Yes.
all right.
So that means taxes will have to be higher than the 6. With an expenditure of 6.
Mm-hmm.
See if this will give us our tax number.
40.
7.8.
I think even the most open-minded people are not going to 7% budget. What would our mill rate turn into then? I don't even want to ask.
Yep, there's one on that one. Hold on. 36.67.
And what was the bid for?
33.9 currently.
It's almost 3%. It's 2 3/4.
It's 2.77 mils. It's a 7.87% tax increase.
Can you just put a number in for the Board of Ed for me, just to see what this would do? I don't want to screw it up, but I don't want to just be quiet.
Wow!
24.
Been a little hostile tonight. Swearing.
I know, swearing the whole 9 yards. 24,683,408.
24,683,
408.
it's 5.26 for
Yeah,
that.
what's the bottom?
Brings us to 4.62.
And what's the mill rate come to? I'm not saying this is what I want to do, I'm just seeing what happens. It's easy to do in one spot.
It might not be linked right, I'd say. Nope, I'm sorry.
You need it again?
Oh, it's there. It needs to be 5. There we go. Not your problem. There we go. 1.90 mils. And we still could look at some of those other changes in revenues that people are proposing.
Yeah, what?
That's 5.54% tax increase. 1.90 mils.
That's a $633,000.
So,
You can put the number back, I just wanted to see.
my transfer from fund balance isn't in there anymore?
Well, I can't decide that. You guys would have to decide that.
We haven't used it yet. Not once.
Maybe this year.
It's, I know it's not a perfect world, but it's tax dollars that people pay. Why are we asking? And I get it, it's not a one-time, I'm not saying to use like $750,000. So if you look at the Board of Ed's first round of eliminations, which is not 600 and whatever, it's 277, 697. But if you look at a lot of it, it's things that we talked about, like if we did an athletic package per se, sports supplies, JV sports supplies, volleyball supplies, soccer supplies, wrestling supplies. Oh, wrestling team? That's cool. Basketball supplies. The unfortunate part is the bottom. I wouldn't want to see any of that.
That's wrong too. This is wrong, that's too. Yeah, in Syria.
But what I'm saying is if you look, there's stuff that we're talking about, such things as like athletic supplies and things like that.
Oops.
And some of the custodial stuff that you're looking at their 10% increase.
Yeah, the number I came up with is just a touch higher than the first 2 pages they had on their elimination, so.
Yeah.
These 2 pages, if, and I'm not saying it has to come along with it, but it's just, I just want to see what that would put me. That leaves the blue page intact, which is basically the teachers they would say they'd have to eliminate. But it would severely hurt what they say is their school sports.
I think one of the things you guys agreed on is that there had to be some set of cuts. but you want to put a budget forth that might be a little on the stronger side and leave a good portion up to the taxpayer, correct? Is that what you were?
Yeah.
Okay. I would tell you putting the first number up. I think you would be hard pressed. But what was the total you had her subtract out of Board of Ed?
$648 or something like that.
And I know, so you used a number of $650,000 to get to where you were.
And that gets you where to a 5% increase?
633,000, just over 633,000.
Okay.
And that puts them at a 5% instead of the 7?
5.26%.
But I do think that that's, in my personal opinion, too much to take out of Board of Ed. The first, I mean, I think if we're agreeing that to send something to the taxpayers to have them choose, I think that's too drastic of a cut in the beginning. Like I said, some of the things are in here that we've already discussed, and that's volleyball and, you know, all those supplies and stuff. So,
yeah, if you take that, if you, 633, yeah, but we took 78 out. So if we take the 78 out, then it's only 555. But
still, I think it's still too much. That's my opinion.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, I mean, it doesn't have to come all from, but
Right.
$633,000 will get you, no matter where it comes from, will get
Right.
you 5%.
So you're saying between reviewing the revenues, we need to find $633,000 to get at a 4.62% increase.
Yes.
Which is a 5.54% tax
increase.
Without touching the fund. I didn't say that, we can touch it.
Just think about that. You're looking for a number.
And it's almost a 2% mill increase, right? That
And
number?
1.98.
One like that.
That's not a percent, that's actual mills.
Yeah.
Which still is.
You can put the Board of Ed number back. I just pulled it from there because it was easy.
So you can find the number.
One place to pull it out of. I mean, it's because we have an improvement, but it just gives us a number.
So why don't you guys talk about a number that you'd be okay with pulling out of the fund balance temporarily to see what it did to your budget, to our budget, to the budget.
That would like the right number?
And that was with the $78,000 out that we were talking about for the
Yes,
project.
it has the 148 that they brought us the other night,
So I actually took it
and
in
then
the
the
second one,
78.
sorry.
That's okay.
So $700,000, then we get 5%. That's $78,000. $700,000 is the number we're looking at, not 633.
Yeah, because you took it out.
I took it out. Yeah, I took it out twice.
So why don't you just put like 300 into the, to take out of the fund balance and see what it does.
That ain't go the right way.
Oh, no, because you changed the number back on the other side, on the board.
Oh, okay.
You put my number
Yeah.
back in, to where it was. So that would still be, without, so it was 633,000 more. Because we put the number, Board of Ed number back.
Right.
Because we officially
Yeah.
changed it, so it's.
Yeah.
So it's technically, with putting that in is only $333,000 to get it down to the 5.5%.
What are you guys thinking about that revenue number?
Be pretty solid on all those in there except for, it's the only thing that possibly potentially would change, and that would be where we decide to use for a fund balance number. All the other numbers you're pretty solid on.
I mean, we do have the changes, I upped the interest income based on what it is. We look at that again. Town clerk upped her number. And then there's a couple of tax decreases. Taking the interest and fees down from 175 to 75 drives a $100,000 decrease. And motor vehicle sub going from 300 to 275 drives 25,000.
And are you?
We have been over 300 each of the years. And I think part of that's just the nature of cars are so expensive. So
Why are we going down?
the tax collector thought the bubble eventually has to burst. But we're 334, 458, and 354 for the 3 years.
And cars
And this
are never
year gonna
we go down.
This year we billed over 350.
So why would we just keep it at 300? If we surpass it every single year, if something happens, it'd be 300. I mean, why are we going that far down, I guess is my question. That seems just playing it safe.
I gave you what people gave me.
Don't you like when she plays that middle of the room?
Did you see her roll her eyes?
The, what did, Rand talked about having an increase, but what is, did he leave his number flat?
Yes, his number is flat, but he's barely gonna make it, I think, this year.
Okay.
His numbers,
Not that big, but it's a number.
his numbers are 250. I think on the sheet he actually only thought 200. And this is, I think, going through January, but it was 143.
Okay.
And this has Calmer in it, so that's clearly not a good one to use, so you got a 184 and a 228.
Yeah. But then he's talking about this project on 12 Water Street, which is a 200,000 square foot manufacturing. Of course, that could fall this year, I didn't think of that. Because that's that, if it's the project I'm thinking of, that's gonna be bigger or, you know. Depends on which year that falls in.
Right.
I guess, on that number.
So I don't think the 250 is an unreasonable number.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
Based on what's happened.
Can you go back up to the $100,000 decrease?
Oh, interest and liens.
And it's,
So interest and liens, 293, 255, 306. Currently 175, 75's come in as of January 31st. I mean, obviously, the more we collect, the less there will be out there to collect. There will always be some to collect, because that's just the nature of how taxes work.
do you really think we're the 100,000?
She really dropped her number of collections, didn't she?
A lot,
I mean, she,
125,000.
recouped a lot over the last 3-4 years.
I don't know, more vehicle wise, I don't see why it wouldn't just stay at 300,000.
Go to Starbucks.
Do you know what I mean? But that's, I mean, you guys can change that, that's just a recommendation.
And supplemental is what comes in the course.
Just cars registered between, after the October 1st grand list and through July 31st by state statute.
Cars, commercial vehicles, anything that goes through motor vehicle.
Anything that's on a motor vehicle. Registered motor vehicle.
I think those two numbers, I mean, you don't have to do it tonight, but I think they have to be looked at.
And I will, before we meet on the 15th for sure, update everything for more current for the year-to-date
Okay.
for you guys. I probably could look at it for Thursday if you want.
Yeah, that would probably be good, because, yeah.
Okay.
300,000 is still in there, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something you guys want to do for now? It can always be changed, but we need to, if we're going to do it, we need to make a motion because we don't want to leave it in there and forget that it's in there. You can change it again, obviously, which we may, you never know. Or you can just mix it up.
I'll make the motion if it passes. I move we put $300,000 as transfer fund balance into the revenues.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't get there yet. Relax. All right, still passes. All right, are we ready to call it quits? All right, motion to adjourn? All right, second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And did you scroll back?
I have a small organized, and I'll forget to Are we too bad? Is it?